Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Zach Celadonia.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and joining me, once again, my co-host, colleague, cohort, another partner in crime, my brother from yet another mother, Zach Flash Celadonia. You can't be from the same mom as Brian Flash. I don't think it works out that way unless mama started having kids really young or mama's having kids really old. There's a little bit of a disparity there, man. But hey, how you doing, man? I like saying brother from another mother. A little like alliteration, a little rhyming, a little bit of just smiling when we didn't have a whole lot necessarily to smile about in yesterday's loss.
Yeah, dude, I think if Brian and I are sharing moms, then it has to be Mother Teresa or Mother Nature, because the math isn't adding up. There's not enough years in a single person to birth both me and Brian. You know what I'm saying? But I'm good.
What
I'm
a way
good.
to start,
The
by
Steelers
the
aren't
way.
so good, but I'm good. So
What a way to start, right? Well, I woke up, even getting home last night, I finally get on social media, which I wasn't really on. I don't really want to see a lot of people's terrible takes, and I did it anyways, because you know why? I'm a glutton for punishment. I just couldn't help myself. And
I do the same thing, man. I do the same thing.
I'm going to say waking up to, but some of it overnight, some of it within the moment. And there's people like piling on Matt Canada all of a sudden. And I got to jump right to this because Stan Savran, Charlie Batch, they do the post-game show with the Steelers, and you get people that call in. And I think there's a certain Stan and Charlie are under a certain obligation to not say certain things. Now, one thing that was interesting that Charlie did say was he made a claim out there that said that Matt Canada will not allow Mitchell Trubisky to audible, which I think to myself, I saw him do it at least once, if not twice. And we're also seeing what looks like run pass options out there, because there's definitely one time where there was a bad exchange. It just seemed like Najee was standing there with his jock in his hand, like expecting to carry the rock, and he didn't, you know what I mean? Or you see some guys like not necessarily go out for routes. So there's miscommunication, and you're going to have some of that happen. It's still week 2 in the NFL season, et cetera, et cetera. But Stan made a comment to one of the callers or some of the people that were calling in, and the guy was pretty argumentative with them too, which I don't really care for with my callers. I mean, it was getting really combative, and it's got to be tough to be a host and put up with that. You know what I mean? I couldn't imagine.
You think it's tough? You think maybe people take a couple things too personally sometimes?
Yeah.
Don't know where you would get that from.
I don't know, man. It's like it's like your whole week kind of dwells on this. So Stan posed the question of whether you believe the Steelers offense would be any different with a different quarterback. And he said that he doesn't believe that. And I just smell BS. My BS monitor went up through the roof, and I just kind of said, no, man. I'm like, most important position on the field is the quarterback. And when you have poor quarterback play, the rest of it kind of follows the tail to the head of the snake. And it's going to follow in that direction. And we have had some really poor quarterback play, and we're going to dive into some of this. I know people have come on and said, I'm a Mitchell Trubisky hater. There's other people that are like, oh, you can't possibly start a rookie with Kenny Pickett. And I was in that camp, and I actually got turned around to being kind of like, okay, maybe I could believe that Mitch might turn something around here. And then I saw some training camp games. I saw some preseason games, and I still wasn't sold. I understand he was signed. He's the veteran guy, and it was his job to lose. I wasn't sold he was going to lose his job, but I wasn't really sold that he won it. And I have been very vocal, maybe more so than I ever have. Somebody like said, well, I buy backup quarterback jerseys and I stand for these guys. Well, yeah, I stand for them as a backup. I wasn't necessarily ever believing in my mind that Landry Jones was going to come out and be Ben Roethlisberger's successor here, 2022 or whatever like that. Mason Rudolph, maybe not. My whole point with him has been I've never seen enough. But I saw enough of Mitch Trubisky to say, man, if he continues the same trends as he's had when he was with the Chicago Bears, and he's had 50 starts in the NFL, it's not going to bode real well for the Steelers. And here we are 2 games in, and I'm like, exactly when is enough to where I see something and then I should hit the panic button.
Yeah, it's like the Steelers are making us all earn the chance to see Kenny Pickett. They want to like sacrifice enough games so that it's justified to finally put Kenny Pickett on the field. My thing is, I think we've sacrificed enough already after losing one game. And, last week, Mitch did not look good. We'll just be brutally honest about it. It took the entire game for Trubisky to come through and help us win the game. And he did it on a free play. The most important play of last week's game versus the Bengals came down to overtime when the Bengals jumped off sides and Mitch was aware enough to keep his eyes downfield, find Freiermuth for about a 20-yard completion, kick the field goal, boom, we get out of there, we win. That was great. And I said last week that if he had not have done that, I would have been ready then to pull the plug on Mitch. Premature, too early, I don't want to hear any of it anymore, man, because there's no rush here. There's no hurrying. There's no impatience going on here. Fact of the matter is, Trubisky did just enough last week to keep his job, to have job security, helped us get the win. And this week he didn't. And what we saw versus the Patriots is what you can expect to see more of when it comes to Mitch Trubisky at the quarterback position. Now, I'm sick of the ifs and the buts and the candies and the nuts, dude. I can't take it anymore. It's like, well, how do you know Mitch isn't going to get good? Because he's not, man. The proof is in the pudding. What are we waiting for here? What are we waiting for? To drop another 2 more games before we can finally see Kenny Pickett on the field? Or are we just going to cling to these 2 good drives per game that Trubisky seems to be able to orchestrate and struggle through the rest of it? That's not a winning formula, man. You can't win football games this way. The starting offense yesterday had 3 points on the board going into halftime against the Patriots, who I couldn't name more than 3 dudes on their defense. I know they have Matt Judon, and they have Kyle Duggar, who got hurt, and Jalen Mills, the corner. I mean, their defense isn't star-studded by any means. And we got 3 points on the board in the first half. And we're getting to the point now where I feel like it's obvious. I think certain fans think it's obvious. And the people who still want Mitch to start, or continue to be the starter, I genuinely feel like it's coming down to these agendas and these preconceived ideas ahead of the season that all these Pittsburgh media folk and some fans swore up and down they would not let up. They jammed it down our throats that Kenny Pickett was not going to be able to play this year. He was not ready. You got to give it to Mitch for the year. Mitch. Let the veteran play. Let the guy steer the ship. Well, what do you do when the guy's steering the ship into an iceberg, man? This isn't let's not pee on people's shoulders and tell them it's raining, because it's not rain, it's piss. And that is what Mitch Trubisky is playing like, dude. And I get it. The Steelers gave him a contract. It's not an expensive one. They told him that he was going to be the starter this year, supposedly. It's a business. Mitch is a big boy. He's an adult. And none of this would mean as much to me as it does right now if Kenny Pickett didn't literally go out there and prove to me that he's ready to play. He took his opportunities in training camp, got better and better and better. He took his opportunities in the preseason, won games for us, looked better and better and better, looked like the best quarterback of the group under a microscope at a certain point. And still, though, there's this idea and this perception that he's not ready, that if you put him out there, it's going to ruin him, that, now having Mitch Trubisky would be a waste. Dude, I don't care if it's a waste having Mitch Trubisky on the roster. He's a backup quarterback. You have those, okay? They make money. They get a contract. Kenny is better than Mitch. He can do more than Mitch can. And I'm sick of this, like, people like me who are done with Mitch and want Kenny on the field. We kind of get looked at in this light with this attitude that we're just impatient millennials, that we just want the new shiny toy out there, that we don't know football. We just want Kenny Pickett out there because he's the new guy. We want Kenny Pickett out there because he's the best guy. And if you are okay watching games like this, if you're enjoying your Sunday, if you think that this is a reasonable way to go about the season and try to win games with 3 points in the first half and maybe getting 2 good drives a game if you're lucky. And this isn't the show for you, dude. It's not, because I expect
Yeah.
more. I know you expect more. The fan base expects more, man. I didn't sign up for a year of this.
No, not at all. And man, I've got a lot to add to this too. And I'm going to hopefully hit all of my points here. But the number one
He's
being,
supposed to be a game manager, right? He's not managing anything. He's supposed to be a game manager. It's supposed to be the safe play, right? This is supposed to be the safe way to go about things so
and
that we can just have a nice average, maybe sneak in the playoffs if we're lucky. Dude, there's nothing. Mitch isn't managing anything here, man. This is a bad string of first 2 games. And I mean, he's going to get one more shot, I think, because it's a short turnaround here. I don't think they would put Kenny Pickett in for a Thursday night game.
absolutely. Yeah.
But this is it. This is Mitch's last stand, man. And I don't personally expect him to play well. I hope he does. And that's the thing, too, about what we do is people hear this. They hear this analysis. They hear me going off about Mitch, and they associate it now. They think I hate the Steelers. They think I don't want the Steelers to win. I want the Steelers to do win. It's why I don't want Mitch to play anymore, because I want the Steelers to win.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's one that has to be brought up. Short week at Cleveland. Cleveland also, it's also an AFC North divisional game. Can you put Pickett in there? I think the only way he would go in there is if I almost thought he was going to go in Sunday. And
I did for sure. Man. After 3 points in the first half.
Yeah.
And come out of the second half slow, sluggish. I heard from people in the stands that Pickett was warming up. He had a helmet on. I was ready for it. I think the Steelers were too, honestly. I think they were. I think if Mitch didn't have that one drive where Freiermuth finally scored yesterday, a drive that was highlighted by numerous dump-offs to Najee Harris, I think they would have pulled him.
I totally agree. And it's funny that you brought that up, because I was wondering if I was the only one. I was standing there, or I should say standing there, sometimes standing there, I get a little too excited, but next to my cousin, and I'm like, when do you see the backup quarterback on the sideline with his helmet on? And he's like, oh yeah, all the time. And I'm like, I don't know, man. It's like, as he listen in, some people just have the earpiece in. I could have swore he had a ball cap on the entire first half. And we got to a certain portion of the third quarter where Kenny Pickett's on the sideline throwing a ball back and forth with Mitch Trubisky, and they're each flanked by a wide receiver, Trubisky by Chase Claypool, and Kenny Pickett by George Pickens. And so they're throwing the ball to the wide receiver hands to the quarterback, back and forth. Both have their helmets on. I actually see Kenny Pickett come over to the huddle before Mitch goes out there, and then has that drive that we're talking about, that just the one drive, the real good drive. They had a couple of drives that at least sustained a little bit and kept the defense off of the field after the defense was out there for 13 plays to start the game, which isn't great after they played 100 plays the week before. And now they got to go play a Thursday game. We talked about snap count, pitch count of everybody. Phew. And lucky no one got hurt here, but definitely a little war of attrition type stuff. They're going to be, they're tired, and they're going to be tired going into Thursday. And I don't think you can get Kenny up to speed that quick. And let's not forget, I'm going to throw this out there too. Mason Rudolph, as QB3, has been running scout team, and he takes more snaps in practice right now unless they're giving any kind of share to Kenny. So you're not just going to game plan Kenny right into there. I actually wondered if Mike Tomlin was really going to stick to his guns, and one of the things that came out about maybe not playing Pickett all year, I'm like, would he actually go all the way to the far end of his bench and look at Mason Rudolph? And everybody's heads have just exploded that I said that. But it's whether he wants to stick with a veteran quarterback or not, but he's not happy with what he's got. And I thought that yesterday, Kenny was right there in the huddle, and then it looked like, from my view, I'm like 20-some rows up off the side of the Steelers bench there, and I'm looking, and I think it's Mike Sullivan, the quarterback's coach, not the Pittsburgh Penguins coach. And he goes and he puts his hand on Kenny Pickett's shoulder. I mean, he's in the huddle and everything, and then he says like a word to him, has his arm draped around his shoulder. Couple like just soft words or whatever, and Kenny goes from about the 30-yard line and walks up the middle of the field up to the 50, and I'm like, holy crap, I really do think there was a conversation on the sideline to sit tight. You're gonna get your chance, yeah, but stay loose, because we might need you. I never ever see Mason Rudolph or Landry Jones or anybody else, even Michael Vick or whoever, when Ben Roethlisberger's out there with a helmet on, warming up in much the same way on the sidelines. I mean, I sit on the bench with the Surface tablet or whatever, but it really was a little odd. It wasn't, I don't know that it was picked up by a whole lot of people that weren't there to be able to see it. I don't want to spark a whole lot of controversy, but I guarantee you that if Mitch doesn't have that drive that he has, and we'll talk about the dump offs here too in a second. Actually, this is a good spot maybe to bring it up right now. So I pulled some stats yesterday. Mitchell Trubisky, actually first half stats, 11 and 19, 57.9% completed. That includes, once again, a shovel pass as part of that. 96 yards, 5.1 yards per average, 23-yard long. And he had the one interception. It was good for a 49.5 QB rating. He pulls this up a little bit better in the second half on that one drive. 10 of 14, 71.4%. 72 yards, so 7.2 average, 14 long. He had a touchdown and a 106.9 quarterback rating in that second half. But we also got to remember the last two drives that Mitch Trubisky played in. Steelers were 3 and out in both of those. He was 2 of 4 for 5 total yards in those two completed passes. And this is where I'm getting at, where you nailed it. You nailed it right on the head. I think there's some Mitch apologists that are out there, and they look at people like myself or yourself that have said maybe Kenny's the better play from the get-go, and we maybe not gave in our minds Mitch Trubisky the fairest of shakes. And that's not fair to the way I feel or operate either. I said, let's see what this guy's going to do. I didn't believe that he actually lost his starting job or any reason why he should have just shoved the rookie out there. I was a sit the rookie the whole year kind of guy behind him. But I also was very much adamant that this is the flavor that Mitch Trubisky brings. Hot, cold, inconsistent. The dump offs. You didn't have a target to any of the running backs in the entire first half, and you want to call him the king of checkdowns, but there also was only like maybe one of those little jet sweep things. You get Derek Watt in there, and he moves the chains on a 3rd and 1. You have a little pitch play to Freiermuth or Gentry or whatever, and you're trying to supplement something to the run game. I'm not dumping on Matt Canada. I can't see really a play call where I say, wow, why the hell did he run that? Why did they operate? Why did they do this play? I saw a lot of lack of execution. I also saw that when they scored that on that drive, like you mentioned, they went to Najee Harris, and they went to him big. I mean, 5 catches in that second half. He almost led the team in receiving, and he was able to start cooking and creating. He's a team captain himself. And that started getting some things going. Why isn't anybody going in the middle of the field? Why isn't anyone finding George Pickens or Deontay Johnson? They're out there. He's missed. He didn't find Deontay on a drag ride. Didn't find Deontay on a quick slant, or didn't connect. Or it's almost like if you watch some of the passes that were completed, it felt like the ball took forever to get there, and it'd almost be smacked out of the hand. Or by the time they did, in the case of Pat Freiermuth, once or twice during the early part of that game, they were knocked out of his hands. You're saying Mitch is supposed to be the safe play. It sounds a lot like Mitch is playing too safe, and when you don't have the benefit of being there in the stands, the All-22 film wasn't up just yet. I really wanted to put a couple of these out there because there were opportunities, and my dude, he's getting some happy feet. He's making maybe one read or something like that, and then I like there was some conjecture from Charlie and Stan too as to whether or not they've told him not to run. But he still did it, and he's still going to move.
Excuse, man.
Just,
I'm sick of it. I'm so sick of it.
I know.
You shouldn't have to pigeonhole all these reasons. Like, oh, well, maybe they're telling him this. Maybe this. Maybe Mitch actually isn't trying that hard on purpose. Do you realize what this sounds like? Yeah, they told Mitch not to run if there's trouble. They told him he's not allowed to audible. It's ridiculous, man. This happens all the time. I feel like when discussing a player's talent, quarterback or not, if you really think this guy can be something, I'm talking about the Mitch supporters right now, you will give yourself and you will make every excuse in the book. You will give every reason. You will be like, well, this guy dropped it. Well, maybe there's a wrong route there. He's still new to the system. Okay, the Freiermuth drops. Number one, the first one was off of one outstretched hand. That's not a drop. Freiermuth isn't going to Odell Beckham that. It hits off of one hand, not a drop. The second one, Kyle Duggar, who I just mentioned, the ball went through his hands, so changed the trajectory of it and got to Freiermuth. And I think a lot of people on Twitter and Facebook don't know how hard it is to catch a pass when a defensive player already tips it or affects it. It's not easy, man. It has nothing to do with Freiermuth, the player. Freiermuth, I think, is showing he is a top-tier tight end. So the quick reaction to like, oh, Freiermuth's got to catch that after Mitch hit him on one hand was very shocking to me. It was alarming. I was like, were we seeing the same thing here? I don't expect Freiermuth to make that catch. If he does, yeah, it's amazing. He's got to tip it back to himself and dive. Those were bad balls from Trubisky. Whenever he decided to take a risk, they were bad balls. You know, there's playing safe and there's playing scared. There's playing not to lose, and you end up playing not to win.
Yeah.
And that's what Mitch Trubisky is
Absolutely.
doing, man. And I really don't have the patience or the, what's the word I'm looking for? Will to argue about this much longer. I'm to the point that I'm just about to throw my hands up and say, listen, if you think that this is okay, if you think that Trubisky really has it and can be our starter all year long, then we aren't on the same level here, dude. I have nothing to argue with about this point. Kenny should be the quarterback. Trubisky, call a spade, dude. Yesterday was a terrible game from Trubisky. It was a bad game with a couple moments of like, oh, we actually have a competent offense. That's not enough for me to give this guy the job for the rest of the year. And I think back to preseason, how close Kenny Pickett was to getting the starting job. And then Mitch throws a, whatever it was, 40, 50-yard deep pass to Deontay in a preseason game. And that was the hammer on the desk. Everyone was like, boom, that's it. Trubisky's your starter. That's all we needed to see was this one deep ball to Deontay Johnson. He's clearly the guy for the job. He's clearly better than Kenny Pickett. And from that moment, I felt like it was forced. I felt like there was something very fishy about that situation, that everybody was just so gung-ho to be like, yep, it's Trubisky's job now, because he finally had a glimpse of competent play in the preseason.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he ran away with the job, man. This whole Mitch Trubisky experience has been forced. Whereas when you see Kenny out there, when Kenny has the ball, when Kenny's trying to make plays, it's natural. It isn't forced. You see what he does well. He's going through his reads. He knows when to check it down, but I'll say this too. Yesterday, Mitch was straight up checking it down. There were no play designs involved. He was checking it down. There were guys running open. There was one play in particular. I swear he had like 5 seconds. He went through all of his reads and threw it to Najee right in front of him. Right in front of him. And I haven't seen the all 22 yet, but I did see enough plays where guys were running open. The TV is big enough, dude. I can see it.
Well, and I bet like they go off screen downfield and you don't see like necessarily all the whole picture.
Yeah, if they're off the screen, totally. But there are guys 10, 20 yards in front of him. You can see on the TV. He can fit the ball in there. They're NFL throws, and he's not taking it. The one play that really strikes me was it was third quarter, I believe, and you had Deontay down towards the bottom of the screen, so closest to the television, and it was Claypool on the other side. The two of them ran 20-yard crossers, so they both ran towards each other at an angle, and at about 20 yards, they cross each other and go like the opposite way. This is on purpose so that their defenders get rubbed or picked off, and then the Deontay or Claypool is left pretty much wide open. People on Twitter were like, oh, we got guys running into each other. Dude, it was supposed to be that way. And guess what? When that happened, Deontay broke wide open. As Claypool and Deontay's cornerback ran into each other, Deontay broke open down the field, and Mitch checked it down to Najee Harris. It was open. And that's just one example. I think Canada is a scapegoat. I don't think he's perfect by any means. I don't think he's a top 10 offensive coordinator by any means.
No.
But he's putting Mitch in situations to succeed, and Mitch isn't taking the chances.
I totally agree with that. I think a position to succeed, and people are saying, well, we saw this same offense with Ben Roethlisberger last year. No, you didn't. Like, and Ben, I think, might have actually had something physical to him where he couldn't get the ball always downfield. And I understand, like, people will think, well, Ben starts calling plays and they're running like this muddle huddle, and then like against the Vikings, it's like, well, the Vikings are pretty much in like phone it in, prevent defense mode, which is where Mitch has had most of his success, in a little no huddle or against any type of prevent end of the half type
That's exactly
stuff.
what happened, dude. Our touchdown drive that we finally got to Freiermuth, all the checkdowns to Najee, he was almost the only guy on the TV screen, which means they were in prevent. That's why it opened up for Mitch seemingly for 10 minutes when we had that touchdown drive.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm sorry to cut in here, but I
No,
want to
no,
get this
no,
point
because I still
across
got a
while we're
lot.
still
I
on
still got a
Mitch.
lot to pile in here too.
Okay, cool. Because I don't want to bring this up randomly after we're done talking about why Mitch shouldn't be starting anymore. So I saw this tweet from Matt Williamson this morning.
That's
right?
yes, I got it. It's right here.
You got it?
I
You
believe
want to
so.
just read it off?
There you go. Mitch Trubisky's
Okay.
attempted 71 passes in a Steelers uniform. Just 10 of those have traveled over 20 air yards, and 15 of them have been at or behind the line of scrimmage. And before you jump, hold on. I'm going to go through all of the Steelers' possessions over the last let me do the math. 9 quarters of football. Okay? Punt, field goal, touchdown, punt, and a half. Punt, field goal, punt, and a half. Punt, miss, field goal. And then going into yesterday's game, punt, interception, field goal, punt, and a half, field goal, touchdown, punt.
2 touchdowns. 2 touchdowns in 9 quarters, man. And you people want to say we're the crazy ones that one Kenny Pickett out there, man. The proof is in the pudding. You ever wonder why Tomlin says that? This is literal proof. It's on film. It's on tape. Mitch isn't doing enough to get the job done.
Totally. And I definitely have some more to toss in on this whole thing. Let me see if I could. I'm trying to pull up some statistics.
Hey, if he comes out Thursday night and plays well, great, dude. Changes nothing about what I just said. It changes nothing. If he's able to come out Thursday night and play well, more power to you, brother. I'm glad because the Steelers are going to benefit from that. But I don't see it. I'm done playing it safe, being like, oh, well, what if Mitch gets it together and I look stupid? I don't look stupid, man, because he hasn't put it together, and he's not. If he does, you know what? I'll be happy because the Steelers won, but I don't see it happening. You know why I don't? Because Mitch is proving to us that it's not going to happen.
And, let's say something. Mason Rudolph got 16 points in an overtime game against the Detroit Lions last year with what we think is a worse offensive line. So when right below that Matt Williamson tweet, by the way, somebody says, I have to question if some of it is somewhat at least still on Matt Canada. Like you said, he's not perfect, but everyone here ran Todd Haley out of town, ran Randy Fichtner out of town. You need a guy from the college ranks with fresh ideas, someone from outside the Steelers system, and they go and they get him, and you're still not happy. And I have to think that being either a head coach and or offensive defensive coordinator, special teams guys, they only get dumped on when something bad happens, right? But those are like the most thankless jobs in the entire National Football League, probably next to, actually being a quarterback that's probably brought in like Justin Fields, for example. You're drafted to be the franchise, and then it's just not going your way. And it's some of that's just the Aaron Rodgers
in your division. You
I
literally
know.
own stake in the Bears.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth, but I see the routes. I see where players are being missed. There were. I'll throw Dane's name out there. He's a fan, follows us over on Twitter. You've probably seen Dane's tweets around if you are a Steelers fan and you're talking around. And Dane was upset. And this is the guy that was like, stay off of his back like a week ago. And he was getting upset. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it was about the George Pickens deal. And it was just like, he can't find him on the field. And this guy's supposed to be like a steal of a draft pick. You take a look at the players that the Pittsburgh Steelers have on this roster. You take a look at the skill position players, like you said, Najee Harris. You look at Deontay Johnson, who just got the bag. He just got the contract, and we see why now. And I'm almost getting a little upset with him a little bit, a little too much crying, complaining, maybe a little too much gesturing. Like, save it for when you know you're right, dude. It's like you're fired up and competitive and intense. That's great. But Chase Claypool.
The fumble?
Yeah, he was pretty fired up.
He was right, though.
I know he was. Barely. And there's another completion. It's like, that's still not, give an easier ball, man. Like, none of these are easy. Chase Claypool's making a difficult catch on the sidelines, and Deontay.
I saw Mitch supporters giving him credit for the 2-point conversion throw to Deontay, and Deontay literally had to lay out for it, man. That wasn't a good ball. Deontay had to be Deontay.
I think this was the one. I think that was I think this one that we're showing right there. That's the one that was the play right there. It's wild. It's just wild, and it sounds like I'm just being a broken record, but now we've seen it in a Steelers uniform, and we're seeing the same things repeat. No, has not thrown for 200 yards yet in a game. I mean, the only guy I think that was worse yesterday was Baker Mayfield with the Panthers, and he's a late addition to that team and a fish out of water with all of that. I think they have their own, but you can't tell me that the Panthers have better skill. Maybe Christian McCaffrey on a certain level, but is he still the player he was a year or two ago before his injuries, or is this team just bad? But you look at some of the comparisons, like I said, George Pickens, for example, and it's just, I don't see it with the play calling with Matt Canada. I'm not seeing it from yesterday. Like we dumped on them the week before. It was like, run the ball again and chew some clock. And I was worried that the Patriots are going to do that in the fourth quarter, and it's exactly what they were able to do. And ultimately, it does come down to two other plays that really weren't Mitch Trubisky factors. But we discussed that if Mitch Trubisky is unable to lead this offense, generate some points and some drives to keep the other team off of the field, this is how Nelson Aguilar gets on the field and makes that play that he does with hand fighting with Ahkello Witherspoon. You can't have any better position or play on the ball, and it just doesn't roll your way. And then Gunner, of course, boom, dink, right off his face mask or whatever happened, losing track of the ball on the punt return. And
yeah, it's inevitable, dude. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly Gunner, that was his fault, and there's other players at fault besides just Mitch. But if you have a quarterback who can finish drives and score points and put you in a better position, you won't lose the game after one unfortunate mistake or two. These catastrophes become little blips on the radar. If the Steelers were up, 20-10 yesterday or whatever, just some generic score, and Gunner fumbles, not that big of a deal. Because the offense couldn't do shit, it's a big deal. Every mistake is a big deal that doesn't involve Trubisky, because it comes back to Trubisky not being able to do enough on offense. It makes sense to me. I thought about that very thing this morning because I knew that was going to be a topic on Twitter and in the radio waves and everything was, well, Mitch isn't the one who fumbled Gunner's fumble there. That wasn't his fault. Yeah, but if we had been doing better until that point, it wouldn't have been as big of a deal. People are so nearsighted when they're like, oh, well, it wasn't all Mitch's fault. He's a quarterback, dude. He's a leader.
Yeah, and that's going to come back around to two different things. Obviously, the defense and an inability to create pressure. They tried some different things here, replacing TJ Watt, including DeMarvin Leal and Cam Hayward on the edge. 3 defensive linemen, and then just kind of like the one edge rusher, whether that was Highsmith or Malik Reed at times. And Malik Reed got like a pseudo sack. He got a holding penalty on the one, and Mac Jones had a lot of time. And that is a growing pain. It is a concern. It looked like there was a reluctance to blitz at certain times. Mac Jones still made some mistakes. I heard a turning point with Ahkello Witherspoon and dropping the interception. I said that wasn't that big of a deal. I understand he got a little bit more clock and this and that to chew and whatnot, but in the grand scheme of things, that really is way far down my radar of bullet point items as to why the Steelers dropped this game. And the other,
me too, man. You think it would be higher up because it was a good Randy Moss job on Nelson Aguilar's part, but not to be an apologist, but Ahkello Witherspoon played it perfectly, did everything right, except for the most important part, he didn't get the ball.
I was talking about the other one in the middle of the field. That was Cam Sutton. I'm sorry. I conflated. Cam Sutton was the other one. Throw across the middle. And why Mitch Trubisky in his post game, he said something about they need concepts to go there when he was asked about throws across the middle. And I was thinking to myself, was there not a concept where you were throwing the Pat Freiermuth, or you had a ball tip that was picked, or a quick slant that was missed with Deontay Johnson? There's certainly routes that are being run there, and for whatever reason, the ball isn't being delivered in that direction. Everything is like outside. Everything's bootlegged over to one area.
The interception was bad, dude. I said he basically got intercepted twice in one play because it tipped off the linebacker's hands, and then the safety got it. And I hadn't even brought up the interception yet because I've just been so heated after the conclusion of the game. But yeah, let's talk about the interception. Worst interception I saw yesterday at the hands of the Steelers quarterback. So didn't feel great about that. And he's just forcing everything, man. Like there's nothing really more I can say about Trubisky's performance. I think I've made it clear where I stand on him. And if you're one of the people who thinks he deserves another chance, More power to you.
Well, he's going to get another chance
Oh
because
yeah, Thursday night.
Thursday you got the short week, but now with the mini bye and a little bit of extra rest and maybe time to game plan, you got the Jets. I don't know what the Jets are doing there, but they were cooking. Your dude, F. Joe Flacco, didn't he came across to just smack the Browns. Things could be worse. Like the last 2 minutes of that game and they lose, or being up like 28-7 or whatever the Ravens were on the Miami Dolphins, or anything Nathaniel Hackett's doing in Denver. They snuck out with the win, but goodness, man, they had I forgot what the play call was on third down, and then they ended up sending out the field goal unit and had to delay a game, and it sent them out of field goal position, and they had to go punt.
The Browns?
No, the Broncos.
Oh, okay.
So,
okay.
and they've got Russell Wilson, who they traded everything away for and gave this huge, rich contract, and that's not translating well yet either. And that could just be where somebody says, well, see, you just need time. And it's like, there's not enough time in the NFL. It's a 17-game schedule. Every single one of these games is paramount that a team comes away with a victory. And the Steelers, I don't necessarily want to say must win, but you just look where the Bengals are, 0-2, and in the new playoff format, no team has made the playoffs starting 0-2 so far with this. The Steelers are at 1-1, and they got another divisional game and an AFC conference game here, and they most certainly stacked up well with the New England Patriots and could have won this game if some other things would have worked in their favor. And again,
yeah, we should have won. We should have won.
I felt
it's
that
tough.
way.
It's tough saying that after like seeing like how the entire game transpired, but all the mistakes that were made. I mean, we should have won that game. We really should have. We're the better team. Came down to multiple mistakes from the quarterback and other snafus, but we should have beat the Patriots. I don't feel bad about the defense, honestly. I know yesterday was a rough showing in the pass rush department without TJ Watt, but we kind of expected that. I think we'll get better and better as the games go. Malik Reed, there are certain plays where he gets in the backfield super fast. His issue is I've noticed he gets held by linemen, and it's not severe enough that the flag is always thrown. He gets held rather easily. So if he can work on that or get better at getting off of the holds, we're in good shape with Malik Reed. Like you mentioned, he had a nice holding call on a second or third down that is basically a sack. And DeMarvin Leal played really well, I thought, all things considered, for a rookie. And I wasn't jumping off of my couch when I saw him rushing the passer from a stand-up position, because kind of looked like he had some concrete in his cleats. His legs are a little slow when you're compared to watching Highsmith and TJ Watt and whatnot. But he still did a really good job. I found that part funny, him standing up and rushing the edge.
Well, don't
But he
forget,
had a really heads up.
that was our question. Yeah, that was our question in the offseason. He had to put on weight. We were asking.
Yeah. It looked like yesterday they were doing both
position
edge
he was
rusher
gonna be
and
at.
on the line.
Yeah, what position he was going to be at. Hey, I want to jump in here and don't want to forget about No House Advantage, a sponsor of the Steel City Underground podcast, because, this has been a runaway train. But if you had some of these prop bets, like, for example, Pat Fryermuth or somebody like that, No House Advantage is changing the game by offering the most dynamic fantasy sports platform available today. Play and pick 'em contests versus other people for the shot at winning $150,000 plus in cash. Download the app. Choose a contest, select your player props, and earn points for correct picks. Climb the leaderboard for your shot to win big money every day. And you could also test your skills versus the house and 20 times your entry if you hit all of your picks. Bet on up to 5-player props, over-unders, or individual player matchups across every major sports league, including the NFL and that Thursday night football game that's coming up, folks. So we're going to have to take a look at that at some point here in the near future. But all the major sport leagues are available here. Even NASCAR is getting back on the track there. So sign up now with the promo code Steel City. And you will get or sign up with the promo code Steel City. That's at, I'm sorry here, I lost track of what I was reading, which is never good. So sign up here with the promo code Steel City at nohouseadvantage.com. Download the app on any of the app stores available on iOS as well as Android platforms. Get a first deposit match up to $25, and make sure to check out No House Advantage today. Experience daily fantasy sports redefined, because it's not just how you play, but where you play as well. And I know you're big on the whole prop bet stuff yourself, and I know you're joking. You're laughing. We were joking a little off the air about some of that. So, you got some that you got, and you got some that you didn't. And I know they weren't all. I don't want to talk. We don't want to discuss them because it's like the Falcons game or something like that. You're just tuning into later, just to entertain yourself.
That's gambling, baby. You win some, you lose some. I joke that I'm the worst gambler I know, but every once in a while you get a hot weekend. And yeah, yesterday was a good day, man. I had the Packers -10 two different times because the line changed on that. I think they were -10, which means they have to win by at least 10 points. Odds were -110, and then again they were -115. So I took that twice because, as we all know, Aaron Rodgers owns the Bears, especially in prime time. I had Arizona money line. I had Lions money line. I had Giants plus the under in that game parlayed together. That hit. I had Dolphins money line, which was strictly a spite bet because I hate the Ravens, but they came through for me. And then some of the props I had that are a little more fun, where you don't pick a winning team, you pick like a player. I had Gesicki touchdown. I had Freiermuth touchdown and Freiermuth catches. He needed at least 4. I think he had 5. And I had Amon-Ra St. Brown catches because I was woke to this, dude.
Man. Yeah.
I was woke to this. They were tweeting about him before the game for the Lions, and they said he can become one of 3 players in NFL history to like start his second season in a row with 8 catches in every game. It was something like that where I knew they were going to go out of their way to make sure they had him involved, and I think he ended up with like 9 catches. So yeah, yesterday was a very in the green day for me, but I'm sure that means next week I'll be in the red.
Yeah, well, good for you, man. And once again, don't forget that's
now.
Yeah, it's no house advantage. If you go over to Bitly, it's a little bit of a longer URL here for being a short one, but Bitly/Steel City Underground -NHA for no house advantage. It's also over there in our show notes. So go ahead and check that out. Once again, very happy and humble to have them as a sponsor of the podcast here. And Mike Tomlin went on with his presser, and he was talking about the same 2 plays: Ahkello Witherspoon versus Nelson Aguilar with the touchdown, and Oscar Gunnar Olszewski with the bobble on the punt. Which the bobble on the punt earlier in the game, they got to change that rule, bro. Like that's just guy never had a possession of it, so you could just smack the ball back into the end zone and then recover it for a touchback and start out at the 20. Like that to me is just. It doesn't seem fair within the concept or confines of rules versus cheat. You have rules so people don't cheat, and so it's fair. And it just seemed like they made a mistake and got bailed out for it. And
I can tell you why it wasn't a safety, dude. It wasn't a safety because I had $5 on the Steelers to get a safety that game, and if they would have gotten a safety, I would have won $80. So that's why the fix was in. They heard from Vegas that Zach likes safety this game, so gonna make sure that doesn't happen. And I was pissed off, but at the same time, I tried to keep in perspective. We were saved, kind of, sort of, by a stupid rule like that last week when Burrow fumbled and then Pirine picked it up and ran it like 15 yards or whatever. So we got bailed out there.
Well, that's the holy roller, the old holy roller rule. What was that? The Raiders, the old Oakland Raiders.
The fumble-rooski.
Yeah. Like you just can't advance it. And let me tell you some of the hot takes that I'm seeing, because there was something that we haven't discussed necessarily. And I know we haven't gone through play-by-play, and most of it's actually pretty painful for most of these drives. There's just some like errant throws. The one thing I am a little more happy about is trying to establish the run. I'm not going to try and pretend. There's people dumping on Najee today, and Najee is the reason. It's not Mitch Trubisky in that drive. It's Najee Harris in that drive that took over the steering wheel, and that's the reason why they scored. So let's not get it twisted. But at the same time, I'd be remiss to mention 10 attempts, 30 yards. 3.0 yards per carry, no targets as noted there. And the 3 is better than the 2.3 they had the week before. It's still not as good as you would probably like it to be. However, the final statistics for this game, let me see. Najee Harris, I think, had 49 yards rushing. Let me see here. 49 for a 3.3 average. But then he ended up adding five receptions for 40 yards. So he was at 89 yards total offense from the line of scrimmage. And if I were to go through, which I'm going to do, we're going to find that touchdown drive real quick. And with the 2-point conversion. So Mitch Trubisky, short middle, Najee Harris for 14 yards. Trubisky incomplete for Deontay Johnson. Gunnar Olszewski, finally a little jet sweep action, left end 18 yards. So they didn't overuse this necessarily, and I think it's a big, strong part of their game. They didn't get the ball really in Claypool's hands the same way as last week either, but now this opened up Najee Harris for an 8-yard run. Trubisky finds him again for 8 yards on a 2nd and 2 for another little dump-off pass. Short left pass, 13 yards, Deontay Johnson. Najee Harris, left tackle, 3 yards, end of the quarter, and then shotgun pass, Pat Freiermuth, 8 yards from Mitchell Trubisky, and then, of course, the 2-point conversion that we talked about. That's getting that ball into the hands of a playmaker, and that did most certainly open up some of the run game, but we talked about some of whether the defense, you're laying back a little bit, you're not sending as much pressure or anything, but I felt these last 2 games, offensive line is getting like scapegoated too, whereas I don't think they're anywhere near as big a problem as they were last season.
I'm 100% with you, dude. I just mentioned yesterday on the phone to someone that asked me, well, what do you think of the offensive line? Because I was ranting and raving about why I thought Kenny Pickett needed to be in there finally. And I told them, man, I'm not seeing these glaring issues like we did in the preseason. Honestly, there were many times where Mitch had a full 3, 4, 5 second count, I felt like, and he ended up taking a sack or he ended up dumping it off to Najee. And the run game at one point when Jaylen Warren was in there and a little bit of spillover to when Najee came back, we were running pretty well, and this is to be expected. Over time, the offensive line is going to gel because what? Because the left guard position is no longer a revolving door, which we have mentioned on this show. Dan Moore, Dotson, and Mason Cole are finally building continuity and chemistry. And Chooks has been, dare I say, good for Chooks standards. Chooks isn't shooting us in the foot. So the line and Matt Canada in that degree, I'm not exonerating them totally. I'm not trying to be a homer and think they're what they're not, but they're less to blame than Trubisky. Very, very much less to blame. And you know what I think could help elevate Matt Canada and the offensive line is better quarterback play.
Yeah, and Ben had to get rid of the ball in like 2 seconds because everything was Swiss cheese. You had guys off the street like John LeGlue that were playing on the line, J.C. Hassenauer. It was just a mess with injuries. They had no time to gel or build any type of continuity. It's pretty interesting. I've got a lot of Mike Tomlin quotes coming out of the press conference, of course, too. And offensive line, he says it's improving with each outing. It's reasonable to expect that to continue. And as far as Matt Canada, he says he's exercising patience, says it's still he says exact quote is, "I'm going to exercise some patience." And the biggest thing I think was he also mentions with the pass rushers with the upcoming game in Cleveland here on Thursday night, as far as Myles Garrett and the Cleveland Browns defensive line goes, it goes beyond wishing Chooks and Dan good luck. Dan's been pretty good against Myles Garrett so far, I'm not delving into the pregame, which are that episode, little show note, will be coming a little sooner than usual because of the Thursday night circumstances this week. But Mike Tomlin says, "I'm not happy about anything when we just lost a game, but I see the big picture," said the team is still in development. And as far as Mitch Trubisky says, does he need to be looking or be more aggressive looking downfield? I think he could, and we could. And he's trying not to throw the quarterback under the bus, but he says it in the same, you gotta like read between the tea leaves here, as Tomlin would actually say something like that too. I have not had a problem with the offensive line. There were times where I felt Mitch is seeing ghosts. Mitch gets happy feet if he doesn't have his first read, and he just doesn't make it, and he moves around. And sometimes this has been the criticism so far of Joe Burrow over in Cincinnati now. Everybody is on his case, and he is on pace with the $70 million, $60 million, whatever the figure was, they spent in free agency on all of these new linemen, and they still have the one dude that was like a first round pick, right? Jonah Williams, I think was. And then they have a rookie. Yeah, they have a rookie left or right guard as well. And he's on pace to be, I think he's been sacked 13 times so far this season. He's on pace to be sacked over 100. It was something like 101 and a half or something. Somebody already did the math.
They're on pace to lose every game too.
Yeah, I mean that's they were just in the Super Bowl. So
yeah,
I'm not dumping on the offensive line, and I see some things when we said this before. Teams are stacking the box and basically daring the Steelers with Mitch Trubisky to have some semblance of a pass game and beat them by passing. They're just going to stand around and wait to see if the ball's handed off and just stop the run, and you're running into a wall. If you can back those guys off like they started to on the one drive, and also using Najee as part of that, as a tool with part of that. But yeah, some of the checkdowns, it's the same thing I said back in Chicago. Trey Burton, Tariq Cohen, I said the same stuff, man. He had Allen Robinson be 1,000-yard receiver for the 1 year. I get it. He went to a Pro Bowl once, but he's never been a guy that's been 400-yard passing per game, 3-4 touchdowns per game. It's a 1 to 2 touchdown deal. Not even 200 yards yet. Can he even get to 250? Like, I'm not feeling it too. It would be so bad.
This idea that he can help develop Kenny Pickett, and this idea that he's the stable veteran. He's going to show him the way, teach him the ropes. Dude, that worked with Pat Mahomes because he had Alex Smith, who people forget. Alex Smith was in the playoffs like every year for the Chiefs. He was a good quarterback, a proven quarterback. And then it worked for Aaron Rodgers, who was behind Brett Favre, who's in the Hall of Fame. Just because Mitch is a veteran, it doesn't mean he should be showing Kenny the ropes. He shouldn't have the job all year because he's played more games.
I agree. And the other part I was going to finish off with there too is like maybe that 200-ish works if you've got Najee Harris running for 100 or $1.25 or something like that on the ground. And you're not going to get that unless you can back those guys off. I think pretty much everyone knows what the Steelers offense is going to look like here. And everyone's just going to dare them to do something. Cleveland's going to do it on Thursday for sure. And I didn't want to get there yet, but I'm getting the Mason Rudolph game vibes. But Mason Rudolph was thrown to like Tevin Jones, Johnny Holton, and guys like that. So if you have a similar performance, and he didn't have James Conner to hand off to either. I don't even know if he had Benny Snell in that game. Benny Snell was hurt a lot in 2019 also. So if you get to that point on Thursday and he's got his full complement of everybody out there and he's coughed the ball up or responsible for 3 turnovers, I don't know how you're going to be able to progress and go forward in what could be, what should be then would definitely be must win at home, New York Jets. But I think this could be the path or the plan all along if you're going to play Pickett or anybody else other than Trubisky. I'm not going to say that Mike Tomlin's going to jump right to Mason Rudolph. I really don't know what he feels like with Mason Rudolph to be. They felt good enough that they didn't want to get rid of him. But is that just in case they have an injury or something? Yeah, I don't see Tomlin pulling the trigger there. But like we said, we have a little bit more of a break in between these games. You got another game at home. It's a conference opponent, but not a division opponent. You had 3 division opponents in the first 3 games, 3 games in the first 11 days of the season. And that might be the true reason why you didn't want to start out with a rookie. All the bookies that were out there, we were talking about the sponsor No House Advantage and probably with some type of prop bets that are out there and some of the other sponsors we have on our other shows too. And they all felt that Kenny Pickett would win Offensive Rookie of the Year, was like one of the favorite go-getters. And so there's got to be rumbling somewhere or underpinnings if the Vegas bookies are willing to put their money where their mouth is and think that this guy might actually get to play this year at some point, not only play, but also be the Offensive Rookie of the Year. That one's always kind of surprised me, and it's something that sticks in the back of my mind. And it's like, well, how can you Vegas, they're almost never wrong when we're talking about,
unfortunately.
Yeah, the National Fixed League sometimes we're talking about. So
he starts week 4 and gets the Steelers in the playoff picture or to the playoffs. I could see him winning Rookie of the Year still. Odell Beckham won Rookie of the Year for the Giants, and I believe he missed the first 4 to 6 weeks with a bad hamstring, bad knee. And Odell was a sensation as a rookie, but still, though, it can be done. And Kenny's a quarterback too on one of the most storied and historic sports franchises out there. So if Kenny Pickett gets the nod here by week 4, week 5, whatever, and makes a playoff push, it could still happen. And going back to that post-draft show, when I was drunk off my ass on the show, I said Kenny Pickett starting by week 4. That was the first thing I said.
And I think you just pulled that out of your ass, to be completely honest. Like there wasn't
100%.
There wasn't the whole
right.
thought.
Yeah, week 4 sounds good.
Yeah, you weren't thinking about like Thursday night game and a little bit of an extended week after that or anything like that. You were just kind of
Not at all.
You're just kind of thinking, man, it's like I'm winning
I
some
thought
prop bets
3
on the
games would be
draft.
the max. Like if we're gonna lose 3 or have 3 bad games, they can't consciously put Mitch out there for a fourth. That's why I thought week 4. I didn't check the schedule or anything. It just so happens to seem like we're on that pace right now.
Yeah, Mike Tomlin, I gotta say, also said that we haven't scored enough points the past 2 weeks. That's not just a quarterback thing; that's a collective.
That's true.
A little bit,
Yeah.
but
He's leading the show though.
yeah, it's tough. It's really tough, and that's where you think it's like you look at all of the franchises that have had issues over the years, and they draft a quarterback, sign a quarterback, get a quarterback, and they still struggle and still have issues. Again, I'm going to bring up Denver because Denver went through a head coaching change. They went out and snagged Russell Wilson in a big trade this offseason. They had the skill position players. I know Jerry Jeudy just got hurt, but they have 2 stud running backs, Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon. They have Cortland Sutton. You were still holding out hope maybe for like a KJ Hamler, and I think Tim Patrick got hurt. Maybe
he is. Yeah, he's hurt.
Yeah, he got hurt during training camp. But you got all these horses that are there, and they invested a lot of high and mid-round picks in their offensive line. They did have Mike Munchak there for a little while as their offensive line coach. They get the shiniest new toy as like their head coach, the offensive guru, Nathaniel Hackett, and it still isn't coming together quite just yet for that team. You still got a spot where you're like, oh, you could hold out hope, but just take a look at over all the years of the Brock Osweilers and Paxton Lynch and Trevor Siemian and Joe Flacco and Case Keenum. They tried like everybody. They tried everything from the best veteran that they can get to using high draft picks in the post-Peyton Manning era that they had there. And they struggled and continue to even struggle, maybe even if they think they got their guy right now. It isn't necessarily working, even with the coach change. It's tough. It's a very tough league. You're never going to be able to guess. It's just a matter of, though, why all the change? Because they know at some point Joe Flacco wasn't the guy that was going to get it done. They know at some point Paxton Lynch is not the guy that's going to get it done. And in order to figure out if Kenny Pickett is the guy that could get it done, you got to get his ass out on the field. And like I said, if Mitch is there to just keep the seat warm, I wasn't a fan of that right out the gate. He's just going to be looking over his shoulder or whatnot. I don't feel that the guy has too much job security. If you have just 1 or 2 drives that are over 3 to 5 plays in this Thursday night game, and you have some turnovers and things go sideways and you drop a division game to Cleveland, even if you win the game against Cleveland, now, is he going to be that big of a hero? He's going to have to throw at least 2 tutties, maybe 3. Maybe the defense did some takeaways or something of that nature. But, man, it's really tough to say that. We said that takeaway giveaway factor was going to be a factor in this New England Patriots game. And you can't just rely on the defense to bail you out all the time. And the offense has got to get some of that job done, too. So it's been, I guess, the Mitch Hater show. I mean, it's where I've been the entire time, and I don't like
There's hating and then there's stating facts. We're not hating, man. I had this problem too. When I was a young, early 20-year-old and I just discovered podcasts and started listening, I would try to consume every piece of Steelers information I could. It's what got me into this is I enjoy listening to podcasts so much that I wanted to be on one. And I think back to how I was when I was younger, and anytime anybody would critique anything about the Steelers, I would take it so personally and get mad and tell the host they were wrong, and then mention things like, oh, well, you'll see like next week when he does well and this, that, and the other. And I'm not trying to sound like I'm on a high horse here, but I've learned from that experience that we're not rooting against the Steelers.
No.
We're not hating on anybody. I want them to succeed. I want them to do well. It's the very reason why I want the best quarterback in there. And that is Kenny Pickett. It's not Mitch at this point. If you think it is, we disagree. And I just think this team can still be something. The Steelers can still make a push. TJ Watt injury aside, they can still be a better team than what we're seeing put out onto the field. The offense can do better. The quarterback can do better. Can there be better play calls? Sure, but I'm not going to get too far into that because, like I mentioned earlier, it seems like to me that there are guys running open. And I don't want to continue to talk about this every show and reiterate the same points.
Impossible. It's always going to be talked about.
over and over and over again, man, since Kenny Pickett was drafted. And albeit I waffled a little bit, and similar to you, I tried to sell myself on the idea of Trubisky getting the nod and the positives he could provide. But you get to a certain point where there's no more speculation. There's no more, well, what if he does this? We're rolling into game number 3 here, man, of the regular season. This trial and error process needs to be over. We got to move forward. If they want to be anything this season and not just a hardly competitive, non-losing record Steelers, which at this point I feel like we'd be lucky to get to anyway with Trubisky, then they need to make a switch. The defense isn't playing too bad without TJ Watt. It's really not. But yesterday, you saw what happens when the offense is anemic. You saw what happens to a defense when the offense can't do literally anything without luck. They start strong. They start hot. You know, Patriots didn't do anything really either until the Nelson Aguilar play. But over time, the defense becomes less and less inspired. They become tired. They're humans, you know. They're going to try their hardest. The NFL. But it's only natural that over time, you just become so less enthused to get out there when you know your efforts are going to be wasted, man. Ironically, this happened in Chicago a lot with Trubisky. Is their defense would be good, and then it wouldn't be because they got sick of seeing the offense go out there 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. Oh, we got a field goal. Nice. Like, that's what we're clinging to. It's like, oh, I hope we get 3 points on this drive, man. And that's accepting mediocrity to me.
Yeah, and that's kind of the way. There was a lot of talk in the offseason where people were saying, well, certain guys are talking about picking up players like Najee Harris gets interviewed, and they're talking about Jimmy G or Russell Wilson coming to this, or Aaron Rodgers, your boy, coming over to the Steelers, and they don't mention Mason
Yeah, he
Rudolph.
cut his hair, man. He sold out on me, dude. I was
know.
growing my hair out in unity with him and Kenny Pickett. The 3 of us had a deal going on, and Rodgers cut his hair. Kenny Pickett cuts his hair. I don't know what I'll do.
The 4th of those was Nick Cage, right out of like Con Air.
Yeah.
But yeah, everybody was like, hey, they never mentioned Mason Rudolph as their leader or their starting quarterback. And what does that tell you from the players? And I always thought it was kind of interesting from the same perspective that you had somebody like Cam Hayward saying that they were hitching their wagons to Mitch Trubisky, but I never necessarily heard that from Najee or Deontay Johnson. Or maybe I just was tone deaf from some of it. But yeah, that was pretty, it's starting to be becoming a little telling on the sidelines. You're seeing some players who are they get worked up. They're like, exactly what you said, shoulders down, slumped on the field because you just busted your ass and ran a route and you got wide open and you beat your guy. The balls aren't being delivered fast enough. The passes that aren't being made, take a look and watch it. I watched the one replay. I think it was in the second quarter. It was a pass to Deontay. May have even been a comeback route, but I don't think it was. I think this one was just a quick out.
It could be because they ran that like 4 times. Deontay, the comeback was there all day.
Yeah, all day, and he's great. He's excellent at it. But it also seemed like the ball, what we were talking about is like Kenny Pickett throwing people open. To some extent or lesser, Mason Rudolph doing some of that. With Anticipation, exactly. Like, what is open in the NFL, and you're waiting for a guy to be completely open, and you watch like on the replay, and then you still count 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, and then the defender almost gets there. So those are the things that are disheartening. They still make that play, but you're still holding your breath as to whether or not it's going to be a contested catch or not, or whether it's going to be completed. And where's the ball going? There was a few plays. There was one. I think James Daniel got tagged for a illegal man downfield.
He did.
And I had no idea where that ball was going to begin with.
Yeah.
Maybe to James Daniel. I mean, I don't know. And I know Dan Moore, I think, got hit with a false start or something too at some point, and then people were kvetching about that. Mike Tomlin said he didn't hear the Kenny chants yesterday.
Yeah, dude, you could hear him on TV.
Bullshit.
Oh, yeah.
There ain't no way.
I actually thought about that. I thought what it must be like to be him, because I thought what I would do in that scenario, and I thought of Tomlin standing there, you know, with his arms crossed and his aviators, and in my head, I was like, if that were me and I started hearing Kenny, I think I would like drop a smirk and like shake my head maybe. But then I was like, Tomlin probably won't show any emotion because if he acknowledges that he hears it, then he has to answer about it. So I think he heard it and was just like, la 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 la. I
There's
don't hear
cameras
anything. Like,
everywhere, like phones, like people. That's why I was surprised there wasn't anybody like shooting footage of Pickett warming up or anything that happens like on the sidelines. I'm surprised there's not more of it sometimes. But that's also because, like, for most people who don't know, those sections that are like in the 130s behind the Steelers bench, largely populated by friends and family. Those are some of the tickets that they give out to the players, and then they redistribute it to their family and stuff. It's always cool. Like I think I'm up in that section, so I always see people walking around. Like I definitely Tyson Alualu's family. It looked like maybe his son or somebody. He was a real tall kid, and you don't just see people walking around with like custom Alualu jerseys or custom.
yeah, he's
Presley
like a
Harvin
top
jerseys.
recruit. I think he's a linebacker safety hybrid. He's a top recruit right now.
Yeah. It's always cool to see. Najee Harris's parents, saw them walk through, and I had that photo with Miles Jack's mom during the preseason. That was her birthday.
Yeah, that was
and,
cool.
just
I want to
cool
say
stuff.
I love the energy he's bringing. Miles Jack plays like an asshole, and as a middle linebacker, that's what you want, man. I enjoy the jawing from Miles Jack seemingly after every play, and he takes real exception to linemen like holding on to him after the whistle is blown. He like slaps him on the shoulder. Like, I like that in my linebackers. I hope and Minka does it too. Minka and Miles Jack are like two energy like pillars. Like, the two of them, you need more of that, man. You need to play with the swag and a fire on defense. And I think we've been missing that. And Minka's finally comfortable in his leadership role. He's very vocal and very in the face of other players. And Miles Jack has always played like that in Jacksonville. Wondered how long it would take for him to kind of assume that role here. But he doesn't take any shit from anyone, and I love it.
And we aren't talking about a few players. I had a couple that I wanted to pay close attention to. One is Minka Fitzpatrick with another pick. And of course, Pro Football Focus has him only as a 79.7 this week. And I think I mentioned their top 5 graded defenders last week. They didn't have the AFC Defensive Player of the Week from last week in their top 5, let alone TJ Watt or Alex Highsmith, who Mark Madden picked on Alex Highsmith, tagged his dad in a tweet yesterday and said that some guys are just meant to be Robin and some are meant to be Batman or something like that. And I'm like,
I know, man, that's loser behavior.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be tagging Mitch's parents. You know what I mean?
yeah, like seriously. And like, even to the degree of, I was thinking of this, I'm usually not to the point where I'm like trashing. The only guys I usually end up trashing are like LeGarrette Blount or somebody that left the team. Antonio Brown, I still have trouble saying negative things about to some degree. James Harrison, I'm over it. I don't say anything negative anymore, but when he left, I wasn't happy about the situation. So I feel like Trubisky's been the guy I've been the most overtly negative over in a very long time. Like, I've never dumped on Bud Dupree. Devin Bush, who hopefully will be okay. He still had a pretty solid game. I think he's turning the corner, but hopefully this isn't a setback for him. He's really the only guy who got dinged on Sunday. So we didn't talk enough about defense, and I know the Steelers ended up giving up 125 yards, but like you said, I think the time of possession, if we end up going backwards to it, 33 and a half minutes to about 26 and a half. So about 7 minutes, about a half quarter. And most of that, I think the Steelers only had the ball a little over 2 minutes in the fourth quarter. Patriots controlled it. And hey, it was still hot and humid down there. It might have only been like 79 or 81 or something like that. I definitely got a little bit sunburn on the lips, on my face. Steelers are wearing black jerseys, black helmets, and it's hotter on the field. It's always hotter down there. And then you got warm bodies. Like, you know, I mean, I'm just sweating just sitting there, even though the temperature isn't whatever it is. It's still humid. The alcohol.
So many people forget the human element of being a pro athlete, dude. So many people think that stuff doesn't apply to them, and it does.
Yeah, you have to be hydrated and everything else. You got to get some breaks in there. So they're throwing out, I saw a tweet from somebody. It was one of the beat writers, and they were talking about how it was Delonte Scott and somebody else was out there. And then they ended up bringing out Highsmith and Malik Reed. And that's because there was a timeout. Well, they had to give them a blow. These guys are going to be tired. Look at what happened on the Thursday night game. Justin Herbert, he goes throwing for Gerald Everett, tight end, and he had already completed like 2 big passes, and the dude was gassed, and they didn't sub him. The position coach didn't yank him, and then he went to go for him yet again, and that was a pick six, 96 yards or whatever it ended up being. It's an element. It's not like Madden.
Yeah, I'm on the fence about that one because I'm always on the side of the players. So I think, they should have taken Everett out of the Charger game, but at the same time, dude, I mean, You're a pro athlete, and like
Yes,
that was
agree
one
both
drive.
ways.
It wasn't like I'm trying to give sympathy and empathy to the Steelers defense after a game's worth of like having no action from their offense. We're talking about one drive here from Everett where he needed to be taken out, and he's a tight end, but he's a skinny tight end. So like, I mean, you want your players in better shape than that. But I do feel for him because he acknowledged that he needed to be taken out, and they didn't listen to him. So I'm pretty on the fence with the Gerald Everett thing. Because I don't think it's the same as the nutrition that set in for the Steelers defense these past 2 weeks, where we come out looking really hot, but after so many failed attempts from the offense, we look worse on defense. It's just it's normal.
Yeah, I gotta give some props over to special teamers. You got Miles Boykin, who I didn't even
Hell
think
yeah.
was going to make the team, and man, he has been just pun intended here on Strong, the backup running back who was dinged on the injury report during the week. But wow, what a hell of a tackle that was. Presley Harvin had some good punts, and then he had like a really crappy one at like
I
about
mean,
the
that's
absolute
exactly
worst
why
time.
Boykin is here, dude. That's exactly why he's here. And points for us because we've tried to make this point about Benny Snell time and time again. Granted, we didn't think Boykin would make the team at first until injuries and whatnot happened. But our whole reason behind Benny Snell being so safe was his special teams value. And Boykin is taking that um, scenario that Benny Snell had and applying it to his own position here now because yeah, that was a great tackle on punt team. And I noticed on a couple punts, he gets the release real clean and he's streaking down the field. So Boykin really impressed me for sure on his special teams opportunity. He might have found himself a little niche here in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, like a DHB or something like that. And then Boswell, I mean, how many times are you going to rely on this guy to make 50-some yard field goals? I mean, that's just, it's almost become entitlement. It's kind of the same thing like when you get entitled with, Ben Roethlisberger in his peak or in his prime. And the Patriots had missed that one field goal first drive to start that third quarter. And I'm trying to think they were kicking into the river, what was basically an open end at one point. And that attempt was 52 yards as well from Nick Folk. And I'm just like, I don't know, man. I don't think it's going to be the same thing as last week. We just saw with Cincinnati game kicking into the river, and lo and behold, it happened. Everybody just looks at me like I'm like speaking alien sometimes. And then it happens. It's like, nah, this is automatic now. Everybody could kick from at least 60. Just ask Nathaniel Hackett. So, anyways, we're up against it. We had a lot, and I think we still have a lot to say. But again, don't want to beat dead horse.
Oh, I got a funny little anecdote actually. You might not have heard this because you were at the game, but on TV, they made a point a couple different times to bring up, how the opposing coaches will talk about the team that they're playing and they'll compliment guys and talk about what the opponent does well. The announcers on TV made it a point to bring up Belichick's affection for Chase Claypool. And I found that really interesting the way they were talking about him or the way Belichick was supposedly talking about him. All these glowing reviews talking about how he's basically a tight end that does more, a mismatch problem, and a great weapon. Which he seemed to be hinting that we're not using him properly, and like he could do so much more. And I think Belichick wanted to say he reminds me of Aaron Hernandez, but thankfully he didn't say that because that would have been, not the smartest thing to say.
Yeah.
But I read between the lines, and the player he was describing was Aaron Hernandez.
Yeah, compare him to Chase Claypool, who only uses TikTok. Like, I mean, it's not. Yeah, let's not jump the shark there, Bill.
Opposite ends of the spectrum there, but yeah, that's what I took from it because he was describing like an Aaron Hernandez like player, and he was like, "Yeah, I love Chase Claypool, everything he can do." I was like, "Makes sense."
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, thanks, buddy. Thanks for joining the program once again. I'm looking over any other notes and stuff like that. Maybe the Gunnar Olszewski play was a bad lineup thing. I'm seeing Mike Reese put something out there too. So go take a look at that on Twitter. I don't want to keep us any longer on belaboring the mistakes. Got to clean some of it up aside from the muff punt. Could have maybe even overcome that interception. Got to hope that the offense can get a little more generated. It doesn't have to be perfect all the time, but geez, man, it's like in that one
far from perfect. Yeah.
Oh man,
that's the problem. Is people think what Mitch is doing is like, oh, this is good enough. It's not. Let us know what you think in the comments.
Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. It reminds me of the meme with the cartoon dog and the house on fire. this is fine. This is fine. So, and you've got a bunch of players with the Steelers all saying kind of the same thing. And I think a lot of people are trying to connect the dots to Canada. And I'm just wondering if those dots don't also circle back around with Mitchell Trubisky there. I mean, it's tough. It's tough. The hardest part of this, of course, is like if you're seeing these concepts in practice work out and then they don't work in the game. Like, whose fault is that? But again, folks are talking about like, hey, he's only calling these short passes or these like check downs, and there aren't very many throws that are going at the chains, but I do see routes that are going there. That's the other problem. And I see guys that are there, and I see passes that are just the timing or where the placement, and just got to make it a little easy. And maybe it's just not the right fit. Maybe he's just not going to have that timing. I mean, that was something that's been talked about a lot of times. Tommy Maddox, for example, way back when, also wore number 8. Thought that should have been retired for the Tommy gun, but he mentioned
they probably had discussions internally.
Yeah, they did. They probably they texted him, didn't get a response. Old number, his new phone. Who dis? Art Rudy too. No, anyways, Mike Tomlin is like, what do you mean who dis is? He doesn't text probably. But anyways, to the point, Tommy Maddox had once come in for Ben Roethlisberger. It was no longer Tommy Maddox's team, and all the timing and everything else was a lot different, and he was out of sync. So kind of interesting too, because like that last game that was played without Ben or Tom Brady was Cordell Stewart and Drew Bledsoe. So
they showed it on TV.
I know. I saw that as part of the replay. There was a guy wearing a Teddy Bruschi jersey with the old big Patriots logos on the side. I was like, that's pretty cool.
That's a good throwback.
I wish I had this photo, but there was also some jag that was wearing a Ben Roethlisberger jersey. Except it wasn't a Ben Roethlisberger jersey. It was it wasn't a Steelers jersey. It was Ben Roethlisberger printed on a Patriots jersey.
Why?
I don't know. I can't figure that out for the life of me. And I'm trying to figure out, here we go. I have it saved. Let's see if I can pull this up for the masses here for our 2%ers right at the tail end of the program here. And I'm going to see if I can pull this up.
I know there are some Cowboys fans that think Jerry Jones can get him out of retirement, but Cooper Rush did just fine yesterday.
Man, Cooper Rush was ridiculous.
Better than Mitch? I know.
It's just like, that wasn't even fair to even make that, to even see him play and do as well as he had done. That just kind of...
playing loose, man. He's playing to win. That's the difference. He has nothing to lose. Mitch thinks he has everything to lose, which I guess theoretically he does, man. But you got to let it fly, dude. You got to play more loose.
I was barely able to capture this right after the game, but there it is.
What?
I don't know why you would spend money on something like this. Like, Ben has never even entertained being in a Patriots jersey. Did he think that people weren't gonna? Like, did somebody print this wrong? Did it come from China the wrong way? Like,
that would be kind of funny if you just had a random like Aaron Rodgers Cardinals jersey or something. It's like, yeah, they misprinted this, but I'm keeping it forever.
Yeah, it's like, wow. I could see if it was like the team, like the Bengals Super Bowl champion shirts that got shipped overseas.
Speaking of that,
kids or something to wear in like a third world country.
Because they'll try to sell them still at thrift shops, being like, oh, they won this one. I saw a Chargers jersey one time that was number 21 for LT, but on the back it said Rivers. So it was messed up, and it was at a thrift shop.
Wow. Yeah, you know what? We just got to, for good measure, that's just got to go up one more time. Like, this guy needed smacked upside the head or something. I don't know what was going on there. And I was like,
maybe he lost a bet.
One. Yeah, the coolest one I saw a few years ago when the Patriots and Steelers played each other too was a number 12, and it was split between Bradshaw and Brady, like the BRD, and then it went into like the Y instead of the Bradshaw, or it was the other way around, maybe the SHAW, and it had the
from
one
a house divided. Probably the wife's probably a Patriot, and the dad's probably a Steeler guy.
Yeah, and on that note, I just pulled it off the wall here. That's coming up right there.
There you go. Yeah,
got it.
I know a couple people like that actually.
Yeah, the wife and uncle. And we're going to watch the game with my uncle, so we'll see. He's a pretty realistic guy when it comes to football, and I credit a lot of my knowledge and my being grounded. Even though we don't like the same teams, we're able to still shoot the breeze, and we're usually both complaining about, everybody's complaining about their teams. But folks, 2%ers, thanks for Thanks for sticking with us here. A little bit long-winded, but I had to show you that stupid Ben Roethlisberger Patriots jersey. Is that a Mandela effect? Like, what is that? Like, that's just dumb. Like, just come on. Anyways, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Check out No House Advantage as well. My name's Joe Kuzma. His name's Zach Celadonia. Till next time. Very short turnaround this week. Thursday Night Football against the Cleveland Browns. Till next time, folks, we encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.